let's see. I've just entered in the thing and connecting to the internet. I think it's it. Yeah, I just got it. This online service is no longer. Yeah, I just got it.
Oh, it is down.
The year was 2015. To me, this is what I'd consider to be the best year of my life up to this current day. I've had pretty good years, such as 2018, where I'd stream almost daily and stay up all night playing Fortnite Playgrounds with my online friends. 2021 was also a strong year, as I, for the first time, had real friends in real life and love interests as well. I've also had some bad years. The last two have been the worst of my life in specific. Even in those so-called good years, I've had some rough patches that to this day I can still remember vividly. I won't get into those reasons, as I'll keep that for another time. But I did mention everything in this little section for a reason. Nostalgia. Now I'll get back to 2015 in a moment, as well as the entire subject of the video, but nostalgia is a subject I've grown fascinated with within the past 2 years. The one thing I will mention about these recent years is that I've found myself alone. A lot. Being alone, I've turned to studying things to cope with what I was dealing with. Specifically, I've always had an interest in psychology. The study of the human mind and how we feel, react, think, etc. are all things that I've had a true interest in, as well as therapy and becoming a therapist. I'd wanted to make a video on psychology and its relation to gaming for a long time, but I see that as more of a long-term project, so for now we'll keep it to this. Nostalgia can, in a way, be linked to psychology. Nostalgia is by definition a sentimental longing or wistful affection for the past, typically for a period or place with happy personal associations. To me, 2015 is the prime example of this word and its definition. I said earlier this was the best year of my life, and there's a lot writing onto it as why. I was living in Kansas at the time, having only been moved in for a few months. I loved living there. It was a contrast from my birthplace, El Paso, in nearly every way. I love El Paso to death, but Kansas was a ray of light in comparison. The military base I lived on, Fort Riley, was a major step up in quality in comparison to Fort Bliss in Texas. In addition to the atmosphere being right, everything around me was as well. I was about a year into doing YouTube videos, and I was having so much fun making them. Pokemon card openings, amiibo hauls, whatever it may be, I was enjoying it. My sister and I had the popular house, the one everyone wanted to spend the night in. Me personally, I didn't really have friends. I was cool with my sister's friends, but they were honestly just there for her. Instead of friends and sleepovers though, I had what was my biggest reason for enjoying 2015. Video games. While breaking into my new home for the next year, I was also breaking in a brand new Wii U I had gotten for the holiday season in 2014. Games like Mario Kart 8, Smash Bros. For Wii U, and Super Mario Maker were all usual must-plays. I was also on the PS4 as well, playing Street Fighter V and Call of Duty Black Ops 3 for hours. All these games and Alpha Sapphire on my 3DS made for the best weekends of my life. Coming home from school and unwinding on the couch playing Wii U and PS4 while my dad was in the room next to me playing games, my mom was cooking dinner or reading a book, and my sister was hanging out with all our friends was a time period I didn't know I'd become so nostalgic for over the later years. All these games were amazing, but there was always one title that stood out to me above all the others, and to this day is my immediate association with the word nostalgia. And that game is Splatoon. As for how I first heard about Splatoon, I'm not sure. I would have been in the 3rd or 4th grade at this time, so I could have heard about it from an ad on Cartoon Network, as that's usually what I'd watch after coming home from school. It could have also been from seeing the Inkling 3-pack of amiibos on a YouTube video, or maybe even from stumbling across the game in the wild. Regardless, I discovered the game and my interest in it could not be contained. I was so interested in learning about its world, seeing the colorful gameplay for myself, and being immersed in this world that these kid squids were living in. I knew I had to get this game, but I wasn't able to for a minute. If anyone who's watching this was in a military family, then you'll know it's not exactly the richest of professions. I'm not too familiar with how we were doing financially, as I'd only began caring about financials as I started making money of my own in later years, but if hindsight is anything to go off of, I can infer that we weren't doing great. Certainly not as good as the spot that we're in now. It wasn't rare to get games, rather it was selective. The games I got were ones I knew would be titles I could have a lot of replay value in. Smash, Mario Kart, Call of Duty, Grand Theft Auto, you name it. So to have Splatoon, an entirely new title and new IP by Nintendo no less, there was a bit of a risk attached to buying the game. This didn't matter to me though. This was a game I knew I had to try out. I luckily had a way I was able to try the game out, a video rental store. For the weekends usually we'd go to this video rental store, as it not only had various forms of media to rent, but it also had a Marco's Pizza inside of it, so we'd pick up a pizza in addition to whatever media we got for the weekend. This would allow me to try out many games I was curious about, Little Big Planet 3, Assassin's Creed Syndicate, Super Mario Maker, among others. However, Splatoon was the one title I'd gone to the Wii U section to rent, and would almost always play it over the other games I got for that weekend. From my first moment playing, I was hooked instantly. The game I had seen in commercials and promotional material at GameStop was everything I had hoped it would be. This would be a cycle I'd continue for a few months to one Friday afternoon while waiting at a different pizza place. My dad would open up the center console of the car and pull out a fresh sealed copy of Splatoon for the Wii U, telling me it was ours to own forever now. I was ecstatic. My parents knew they had struck gold with buying this game, and I knew I had just found the game franchise I would carry on with me for the rest of my life. This was the prelude to the game with all my experience prior. But what exactly about Splatoon had my interest so well, and what about this game gives me that same warm bubbly feeling 2015 does? Those two questions, along with many others, were ones I'd always wanted to answer, but I also felt unsure about it. After all, it had been nearly 7 years since I had last launched the game, with me not only growing up, but also getting much better at the game through the next 2 games that released in the franchise. I was worried that if I played the original game again, I'd lose the sentiment attached to it, as maybe I was just simply too good at the game now, or since I wasn't a kid anymore, things just wouldn't hit the same, and thus I'd lose that nostalgia. Many of you watching this video probably know now, but recently Nintendo shut down the Nintendo Network for both 3DS and Wii U. With that shutdown, it would also see most of Splatoon being wiped away. So if there was a good time to experience the game again one last time, it was before that shutdown. I wasn't entirely sold on playing the game again at first due to reasons I mentioned earlier, plus playing Splatoon 3, but I was convinced by some friends to hop back on and play one last time. Upon doing so, I realized what made me fall in love with the game in the first place. What I thought would be steamrolled matches, sitting in silence, playing just to play, turned into discussions with my friends about our favorite memories with the game and the Wii U, trying to find each other on the map and see who of our friend group we could splat. It was fun. Originally because I was like, leave my memory. Wow, level 17. It might be a little late in the video, but I wanted to go over the basics of the game before diving into a couple more memories. I'm not going to go over the development history, as nearly every video on the game has done that, and probably in better fashion than I could. Splatoon is a multiplayer shooter made by Nintendo in which you play as a kid-squid hybrid called an Inkling. As an Inkling, you can shoot with your weapon in human form while being able to switch to your squid form by holding the back trigger to recharge your ink and swim. There's different modes to play, with the most popular one and the one used for the gameplay in this video being Turf War. In this mode, your goal is to ink the most turf on the ground, with whatever team getting the most ink on your area winning. This was always the mode I'd play when I was younger, as it was the one that appealed to me the most. The best thing about Turf War is that you didn't have to kill anyone to help out. By inking the ground, you're contributing to the overall goal. This made for everyone to be invested in the mode, and why it's still the primary game mode years later. Next is Ranked, in which there were 3 modes. Rainmaker, where you'd guide a weapon to the enemy base to win, also being allowed to use the weapon to your advantage. Tower Control, where you would guide a tower to the enemy base, requiring one teammate on the tower at all times. And Splat Zones, where you would try to keep an area of the map inked in your color till the time expires. This wasn't a mode that I would play in this game, but I would definitely play often in the later games, most notably in Splatoon 3, as it gives the highest catalog level XP. Next, there was the story mode. This is what I did the first time playing the game, and I loved it. It's not a very long campaign, roughly about 5 hours, but it's a great tutorial for anyone wanting to get into the game. In this mode, you'll get recruited by Captain Cuttlefish, Callie, and Marie to try and save the Great Zapfish from DJ Octavio. You'll go around completing these levels with obtaining a smaller sized Zapfish at the end of each level, before ultimately fighting Octavio in an epic final boss battle and returning the Great Zapfish back to its city. It's nothing overly crazy, as we'd find out with other story modes in the future games, but it was a good introduction to the characters we would know and love today, and you grow a real bond between them. Then the last mode the game brought was the local multiplayer, in which you or a friend would control the Wii U gamepad and place balloons around the map, while the other person would look to shoot them down. I wasn't able to get footage of my own for this, but I do have vivid memories of playing it at a friend's house and having a blast. All of these modes, in addition to the hub world and its shops, made for a pretty good experience as is, but I chose to leave one part out of the discussion up to this point on purpose: the Splatfests. Splatfests were an in-game event that occurred roughly every month or so, in which you, the player, had the choice of choosing between 2 teams and battling out across the whole weekend to see who was superior. These teams would be different every time along with their themes. For example, one of the very first ones they did was, which do you like better, roller coasters or water parks? There were a ton of different themes, including ones putting Callie and Marie against each other, but there was always one to this very day that is my absolute favorite Splatfest in the entire series history: Pokemon Red versus Pokemon Blue. I picked Blue and was so happy to find out we won. Splatfests are always a good time in any of the games, except for 3, but specifically in this game, as it was the best at really bringing out the city, making the world feel alive and one you wish to be in. I'm a sucker for stages at nighttime with bright lights and fireworks surrounding, and all these stages did this for the Splatfest, so I was always super excited to play one. That was a brief rundown of the game and some of my experiences with it, but what about after? The game would see its final content update in 2016, and with the Switch on the horizon, it looked as though the game would fade away. I was half right and half wrong, as in 2017 during the Nintendo Switch presentation, Nintendo would announce Splatoon's sequel, Splatoon 2, as the title launching within the Switch's first year on the market. I was so excited hearing about this, and begged my parents to pre-order the game for me, which they did, and I got launch day alongside the Corn and Bayonetta Player 1 amiibos. This game would be the cornerstone of my life for the next 2 years, and my memories with the game are just as plentiful as they were in 1. Maybe in the future I can make a video on that game, but for now we'll just return to the story. It wouldn't be until 2022 when we'd hear about the next game, Splatoon 3. This time, I had grown up a lot more compared to the previous 2 games, and while still excited for the game and getting it launch day, with everything in my life I was dealing with, I could feel less of that child wonder and joy I'd felt with the first entry. Now we move forward in time to 2024. Nintendo is less than a few hours from shutting off the Wii U servers forever, and my chance to experience the game one last time is fading fast. It took some convincing from friends, but I busted out my Wii U and launched Splatoon, and there I was. The same lobby I remember, all the iconic characters, everything was still there, just as I remember it. I hopped into a turf war and everything came back to me. Yes, I was older, better at the game, but I was having fun, just like how I did when I was a kid back in 2015. No life worry was felt in this moment, rather the same feeling of unwinding on the couch, enjoying my game. The one real difference was now, I was playing with friends, but that honestly only enhanced my experience. I didn't have friends to talk about games with back then, so hearing them share not only the same sentiments I did, but share stories of their own too was heartwarming. We played the whole time until the shutdown, and were able to stay in the lobby past the shutdown hour to get some more games in. It was fun stressing ourselves out wondering when we'd be kicked, only to be brought back in for another. Even when we started getting tired of playing, the game was so inviting that we couldn't resist one more match. I was figuring out ways to end this video, but perhaps it's best to mention what started us out: nostalgia. If we look back at the definition again, it becomes clear as to why I made this video. A sentimental longing or wistful affection for the past, typically for a period or place with a happy personal association. For me, Splatoon is the very definition of this word, even with the replay years later. Nostalgia can be a very harmful affection, as it can cloud your emotions and not welcome in new ones in favor of maintaining the old ones that modern day you might not even fully know if they were good memories to have. However, if you're able to maintain a balance of appreciation for the old and willingness for the new, then suddenly nostalgia doesn't become a threat anymore. That was all probably too dramatic of words to tell you I love this game. I was scared to replay it, I replayed it, and I'm happy I did. But I felt that there'd be no other way for me to tell you that than how I did in this video. Above all else, there's 2 things I want you to take away from this. 1, your nostalgia. There's a possibility to retain what made you so happy about this thing in the first place, while also accepting the change moving on or revisiting it through a new lens can bring. If you are like me, you were afraid to revisit it because it could alter your attachment, don't let that happen. And 2, Marie was better than Callie. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Goodbye.